Maybe I'll just start with presenting myself. My name is Sofie Aelterman. I'm from the city of Ghent, and I work for the Deputy Mayor, Mr. Philippe Watteau. He is the politician who implemented the circulation plan in Ghent in 2017. He's now on his second term, so the first term was 2014 to 2018. So if you have paid attention, the circulation plan was implemented 1 year before the election, which was already a very bold thing in itself. Okay. So mobility in Ghent to become a cycling city. Actually, the title I think is not really well chosen. It should be to become a city for people. I think that would be a better title. Why did we change so much? We wanted a city for people and not for cars. As a lot of other European cities, with a medieval city center, a very dense network of streets and houses and businesses and everything mixed, and very little space. We also struggled with growing congestion as well as around the city as within the city. And we wanted to cut back traffic accidents. We wanted to increase livability. We wanted to increase the accessibility also of the city, and also the air quality within the city. So what did we do? We did not invent anything. We just stole the idea from our neighbors from Utrecht and Groningen in the Netherlands. So we had a look how it's done there. The only thing that we did differently was because we didn't have the same amount of money and the same amount of patience. We did not have time or money to build big infrastructure for cyclists or for pedestrians. So we didn't want to wait. So we kind of took a shortcut basically with the circulation plan. The map you see is the map of the inner city of Ghent. So the colored zones are within the inner ring road. The purple zone you see in the middle is a pedestrian zone. We already had a pedestrian zone before the implementation of the circulation plan in 2017, but we enlarged it quite a bit when we implemented this plan. Something else that is very important for our plan is you see that Ghent has a lot of waterways, historic ones that were damped and parking spaces for a while and are now being reopened. But the fact that we do have a lot of waterways made it very easy to divide the city in a few zones. So we have a lot of natural borders, which made it easier to implement this plan. The main idea is that you cannot drive through with your car through the city anymore. So before the plan, we noticed that about 50% of all traffic in the city did not have a destination in our city center. So people were just cutting through, they didn't follow the ring road, they did not have a destination. So we wanted to make sure that they were actually blocked from our city center. And we did this by dividing the city in 6 zones, or 7 if you also calculate the pedestrian zone. And the idea is that you cannot go from one zone to another through the city center. So, for instance, if you want to go from the red zone to the blue zone, you have to go through the ring road. So if you enter the blue zone and then you want to go to the red zone, you have to go through the ring road again. So leave the blue zone and then take the ring road, which is around the colored zones, and then enter the red zone. So that's how we kind of made sure that we don't have any going through traffic anymore. We did this. So of course we had the water as natural borders, which makes it quite easy because you only have a few bridges or a few roads that really connect the zones. By cutting a few of these bridges and streets, we made sure that the cars could not go all the way through anymore. So I already told you that we don't have patience and we don't have money. So we had to be very inventive and creative with these cuts that we wanted to make. So we put in concrete blocks, we put in bicycle racks, and we put in plants, and we also use ANPR cameras. These cameras can read your license plate. And so we have actually a very flexible system where we can allow some cars, like police cars, like ambulances, fire department, taxis, public transport, and like doctors, things like that. And so we can be very selective on who we let drive through these streets and these cuts, basically. So it was implemented very quickly. The whole plan from ID to implementation only took 2.5 years. This is really, really quick. Of course, there was, it didn't start with this implementation plan. The first pedestrian street was in Ghent, implemented, I think, in the mid-80s. I still remember driving through the shopping street with my mom in her little car when I was a very young child. But now there's just too many pedestrians. There is no way you can get through there with a car anymore. So it's something, the idea of sustainable transport and giving it back and use it for people is actually something that already was going on for quite a long time. But the circulation plan was a very bold and very quick and very dramatic change to this. So what did it lead to? We saw a huge increase in the number of cyclists. Ghent was already a cycling city. We have 260,000 inhabitants, but we also have an extra 70,000 students who come to the city. So we have a lot of universities, a lot of students. Fortunately, most of them ride a bike. So we already were a cycling city, but this definitely increased it really, really by a large amount. We also saw an increase in the number of public transport users within the city center. So within the zoning, the colored zones, the travel time for cars decreased because we have much less traffic there. We had streets that were completely blocked during peak hours, where we now have very few cars driving through. Less transit traffic. Of course, this was the main one of the main ideas of the plan. We also have less accidents because we have less cars in the city center and more bikes and more pedestrians and more public transport users. We also saw an improved air quality. It's always very difficult to connect air quality to a specific reason because it's so affected by many elements. But we definitely saw from the minute we implemented the plan that within the city center, the air quality improved a lot because, as I told you, it's a city center with a medieval core. And then around it, 19, early 19th century buildings. So very narrow streets, street canyons where the pollution gets stuck very easily. And in general, it really increased livability for the people who are living there. The modal split in Ghent. So before the circulation plan, we had 55% in the city center using a car, 14 walking, 22 cycling, and 9 using public transport. So right after the circulation plan, we already saw a very big shift in this. The number of car users went down to 39%, cyclists up to 35%, and walking and collective transport went also up. Our goal for 2030 was actually to get the number of car users down to 27%, and the number of bike users up to 35, pedestrians to 18, and public transport to 20%. But we actually reached this goal already in 2019. So the effect of the circulation plan was huge. And we really need to set new goals for our modal split right now. Something that happens when you free up your city and take out cars, parked cars, driving cars, and give it to cyclists and to pedestrians is that you actually get a lot of space for other things. So this is an example of a street where there's a lot of shops, a lot of restaurants, a lot of coffee shops. The picture is actually taken from the steps of a theater. So it's a very dynamic place. It was full of cars. Because we took out the cars there, so it's fully pedestrianized now. Pedestrians don't need the sidewalk anymore, and we can use the sidewalk to provide space to the restaurants and the cafes to put their terraces there. So it's just a matter of choosing what you want to use your space for. This is another example. So before the circulation plan, this is right in the middle of the city center. There was a parking lot here on this little square. There was a very tiny bit on the right. You can see a little bit of grass and a tree up there. And a couple of months ago, we opened this park. It's one of my favorite spots. It's smack in the middle of the city center. There is a coffee bar and an ice cream parlor on the side. So it's great to get your coffee or your ice cream there and then to enjoy one of the picnic benches on the park. There are also a few play elements implemented in this design. So it's hard to see, but there are a few trampolines in the back. So it's just a great spot to enjoy and to take a rest. And if you're shopping in the street, just to relax, enjoy the city, and let your kids run around. And it's one of my favorite new places in the city. I have one more picture. This, I don't know how many of you have been to Ghent, but this is one of our most famous streets. It's called the Graslee. It's by the water and it has really nice old houses. And if you have a look at the picture in the middle, it was really a car park for a very long time. So also there, the cars are gone now, and it's just the greatest meeting space for people. There is people there all year through. Again, tourists, everyone meets there. Everyone. Water and the view and just the space that we have there for people. So this was very quickly because I'm sure you have a lot of questions. You can put them in the chat session. And I can also add you to the moderation panel, I think. I think the easiest if you put a question in the chat session, I'm happy to answer. I'm trying to add people to the. I have Alistair and Doc entered, but I hope Doc, if you have a question, I'm gonna try to unmute Alistair too.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Who is talking, Alistair or Doc?
Yeah, Alistair.
Yes.
Okay, Sofie. Yeah, very good presentation. Thank you very much. One question I have: were there many objections from car drivers?
When we implemented the plan, we did a survey, and about 48% of people living in Ghent thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
We did the same survey after we implemented the plan, and it was the other way around. So now more than 50% of the people are really happy with this plan. It was a very tough process. We were very lucky to have a very bold and very courageous politician who pushed through with this plan, who had a vision for the city, and did not give up on the main idea of the plan. There were made some adjustments to the plan. We are still fixing some things, but in general, the main idea was never left on the side. We tried to get people involved in this whole setup. We made a group of citizens that we could discuss with, that could have their ideas with the plan. Of course, people were afraid. Everyone was afraid. When the plan was implemented, national TV, journalists came to Ghent and they said, "Oh, it will never work. It's political suicide." Remember, this was 1 year before the elections. It's going to be a disaster for your commercial life in the city center. And that's also what shop owners thought. And that's also how they communicated. So they said, with this circulation plan, Ghent will not be reachable anymore. It will not be accessible anymore. You won't be able to reach us. And they kind of, I don't know how to say, but they kind of dig their own grave.
Yeah.
If you commute to everybody, I'm not accessible anymore, then people will start to believe this. Of course, now a few years later, they see it's not the case. So they kind of changed their communication. We actually have a very livable city center. Compared to other cities, we have one of the lowest empty shop spaces, together with another city who has also a large pedestrian area. But of course, it took a lot of time, and it was very tough for our politicians to just, stand their ground and to go through with the whole thing. Yeah. I'm going to have a look at the chat session, or I can enter a few people here. How do the elderly cope without cars in Ghent? That's a good question. So, of course, we want to have an accessible city for everyone, also for people who have a physical problem, or for people with young children and who maybe can't walk that far. So fortunately, we have within the city center a good public transportation system. We have tram lines going through the city. We have a lot of buses going through the city. But actually, it's really worth visiting the city. You see a lot of families with very, very young children on their bike. So it became just very safe to put your 4-year-olds on a bike. We have a lot of people who have cargo bikes, who put their kids in the cargo bike. Of course, pedestrians have a lot of space as well. And we also have something called bus, we call it. It's a kind of a shuttle that is an electric shuttle. It's small. It's not like a really bus or coach size thing. It's smaller. And it's kind of a hop-on, hop-off bus that drives a circle through the pedestrian zone. So you can just raise your hand. It stops anywhere. It has a fixed route, and people use it to go through the city. So that's one of the things that we implemented. How important is the ring road in the overall scheme? It's very important, because the ring road is basically the road that you need as a car driver to go from one side to the city to the other side, so you cannot go through anymore, but you have to use the ring road. And also to go in between the different zones, you have to go through the ring road. So you cannot go from the ring road to the zone to another zone and then to the ring road. You have to leave and then go like this. So it's very important. So yes, something, it's not a question, but something that I get asked oftenly. So what's next for Ghent? So we have implemented this bold plan within the city center, and we are now for this political term to implement a similar plan for 7 zones outside the city center. So these are also zones that have a very dense population. And also there we want to increase livability, we want to increase safety and quality for the people who live there. So our basic idea is always no going through traffic. And then if you cut out 50% of the traffic, it's just frees up space that you can use for other things, for more sustainable modes. Another very important thing, it's still not easy. Every time we remove a parking spot for, and we want to put a bike rack there, or we need to make sure that the tram doesn't get stuck because streets are very narrow and the people don't park parking spots, so they kind of block the tramway. Every time we suggest a solution to this where a parking spot is removed, it's a fight. So even though most of our politicians in the city hall are now kind of convinced, like, yes, this is a good idea, sustainable mobility is really what we need, it's still a fight. So the idea that you need cars to make your city to make your city alive is still very much anchored in people's minds. So it's, even in Ghent, it's still a struggle. Even though if you visit Ghent, you can really see that it's a very agreeable city. It's a thriving city. We get a lot of tourists, and I think it's because it's just so agreeable to walk around there. You don't have to pay attention. You feel very safe. Cars are not nice to see. Also, if you have a square parked full of cars, it takes away the view of the buildings. It has a very nice city center. I think it's all very important to the idea you get of a city. Just, to be able to walk around, to enjoy a city, to meet other people. So yeah. Does the ring road get congested? Ghent is one of the very few cities in Europe where actually congestion hasn't gone up the past few years. So yes, we do have congestion on our access roads and on our ring roads, but it didn't go up since the implementation of the plan. So there is something like evaporating traffic, and there is something like build it and they will come. So if you build cycling bridges or big cycling paths, cycling infrastructure for cyclists, yes, they will come. If you build parking spots, you will attract cars. But if you remove them and you cut your going through traffic, people will find other ways. They just need a little push or a big push to change their mind. We saw it can be done very, very quickly and very effectively. How have COVID restrictions affected the city center? Do people still go there for shopping? Yes. Well, now we are in a lockdown, so our shops are closed. But actually, during the COVID first wave, we saw in the city center that even more people got on bikes. Even more people started walking because they had to be at home, and they a lot of them live in small spaces. So it really put the finger on the spot that public space and qualitative public space is very, very important if you don't have a garden at home or if you live with a lot of house. So I think in this way, it kind of helped us to gain support for qualitative public space. We did implement a few very quick extra cycling streets. I'm not sure if everyone is known with the concept of a cycling street. So it's basically a street where a car is a guest and a cyclist gets the free of way. So you can cycle with more than two next to each other. A car has to stay behind you. It cannot overtake you. And the maximum speed is 30 kilometers an hour. So we see that if we implement these cycling streets, it works as a magnet for cyclists because they feel very safe there. Another effect that we also see is that the housing prices on cycling streets go up because it's very nice. It's usually decreases the number of cars in the streets. So it has a positive or it's depending on how you want to see it. It has an effect on the housing prices as well. So during COVID, we implemented 3 extra of the cycling streets because we saw that our cycling paths were too narrow for the huge amount of people getting on their bike and getting some air and getting some out of their house. So we had to move quickly and implemented 3 new cycling streets. The planning removal of parking spaces is a battle. Yes, that's what I said. How is the decision-making process structured so that you can move forward positively? Do you have public forums, panels for this? If it's one or a few parking spaces, it goes through a political process. So our mayor and the deputy mayor, they have meetings and then they discuss why this should be removed and why not. So, but it's every time a struggle. But usually somehow we make it. Also, one important thing is that, for example, the mayor has responsibility over the fire department and the police department. And often because our streets are so narrow, we need to remove parking spaces just for safety, because otherwise the fire department cannot get through. So that also helps to kind of find a balance, because the mayor is from another party than Mr. Watteo. So it's kind of a give and take in that way. But if we go for a complete renewal of a street, for example, so we put in new sewage, the whole street is taken out and taken and put back in, then often we work together with the inhabitants. So they get their say. We inform them what's going to happen. And often we take out car park spaces and put in more green, or take out more concrete, because this is also one of the goals of our city, to make it more climate sustainable, ready for the climate. So this is, but it's, everyone likes the visual with the green trees, but then when it comes to, yes, we will have to remove 5 parking spots, then it's of course always a battle. But yeah, it's you have people for and people against it. So we have a very big participation process for most of our changes in the cities. So I think the time that you can just decide as a mayor, we're going to do this and that, I think that's past, that's behind us. But still, even if you have the participation process, I think you still need the courage sometimes to push something through. As I said before, the circulation plan, 48% of the people didn't kind of were before the plan did think it was a good idea. So that's less than half. We did it, and now, I mean, now more people are in favor of the plan. Let's see if there is another. Does Perth need a mayor? I don't know how to answer that question. I don't see that many questions. Nope. Maybe, of course, we implemented this circulation plan, but on the other hand, we also invest in a lot of alternatives. I already told you about our walking bus. We invest also a lot in cycling infrastructure. We are not Copenhagen yet, but we do have a lot of cycling bridges and cycling underpasses. So as a cyclist, it's great that you don't have, well, you have a lot of places where you can cross this inner ring road in a very manner. We invest a lot also in car sharing, because we are not blind for cars. They definitely have a space. But if you can convince people to share one car with 7 families, it takes a lot less space than putting 7 cars in the street. So we do support car sharing organizations with communication, promotion. We also subsidize. If you become a member from a car sharing organization, you get your membership fee, which is 35 euros. I think we have, we pay it back as a city. And also in terms of cycling culture, so we not only invest in cycling infrastructure, but also cycling culture. So we have something called the Cycling Embassy, and they provide reparation shops. You can rent bikes, things like that. So it's a very very integrated plan. The only thing that we don't control very much is public transport, because this is something in Belgium which is managed on a regional level. So this is something that we do not have a lot of control over. But for now, we have a very good public transportation in our city. So we hope we can somehow improve it still, or at least keep it at the level that it is right now. I don't see any more. Wait. Is Flanders a better starting point? That's a difficult question, but I think Ghent is maybe a good example. Do a lot with little, on a very short time and with a very small budget. The whole circulation plan was, I think, 6 million euro, which is not that much if you see what change it brought within the city. So the whole structure was put in place very quickly and temporarily. We are now looking into making these things more permanent, and to make, because concrete blocks in the street is not so nice. So we'd rather have nice parks and more an integrated design of these spaces. So this is what we are now going to work on in the future. I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I hope I answered everything. I would really recommend you, if you haven't seen it yet, the movie that is in the expo. You will really on how it changed and how we did it, and what it resulted in. So I would really recommend you to have a look at this movie. It's really worth it. If we don't have any more questions, I think we probably should go back to the main stage for the panel discussion.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, thanks, Sofie. That was great.
Yeah, if you so get to me, I will try and get there when we're allowed to travel. It might not be next year.
I think that's a highly relevant example for Perth. Fantastic. Thanks, Sofie.
I agree.
You're welcome.
Yes, this is what we need.